The sky above Windsor Castle was soft and golden as the sun began to set. The trees in the royal gardens moved gently in the warm summer air. Inside the castle, lights sparkled like stars. Everything was ready. The long, white tables were set, with crystal glasses, silver plates, and fresh white roses. Footmen walked quietly, checking every detail. The French and British flags stood proudly side by side. But even with all this beauty, something more important was about to happen. People were whispering. Heads turned toward the grand staircase. The cameras clicked softly. And then, she appeared. Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She stepped into the room, and it felt like the whole world stopped breathing. For over a year, she had been almost invisible. No public events, no royal photos, no speeches. She had disappeared, and the nation had waited, worried, hoping. Some whispered about her health. Some feared she might never return. But on this evening, July 8, 2025, all doubts vanished. In one breathtaking moment, she wore a deep red gown, custom-made by Sarah Burton for Givenchy. The dress flowed behind her like a royal cape, strong and soft at the same time. Her posture was calm, her steps confident. But her eyes were filled with strength. Not loud strength, but quiet power. The kind that only comes after pain. She looked like a painting from a storybook. Graceful, glowing, yet real. She was not alone. Walking beside her was Prince William, his hand gently placed at her back. He didn't need to speak. His eyes said everything: pride, love, and deep relief. This wasn't just a public event. This was personal. This was family. As the royal couple walked further into the room, the French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte stood to greet them. Around them, royal staff, diplomats, and dignitaries rose to their feet. There was no music playing, but the moment had its own sound. The soft gasps of surprise, the click of cameras, and the pounding hearts of everyone who had waited so long to see her again. And then people noticed something else, something powerful. Pinned just above her sash were two special badges, the Royal Family Orders. One from the late Queen Elizabeth, one from King Charles. These were not decorations for fashion. These were royal honors, given only to women who had deeply served the crown. Catherine now wore both. It was a sign, clear and silent, that she had the trust of not just one monarch, but two. She had become a living bridge between past and future. Still, the surprises weren't over. On her head sat the famous lover's knot tiara. It once belonged to Princess Diana. Its diamonds and pearls shone under the lights, but it was more than jewelry. It was history. Diana had worn it as a young bride. She had struggled under its weight, just like she had struggled with her royal life. After her passing, the tiara had been locked away in the royal vault. It had not been seen for years. Until Catherine. By wearing it tonight, Catherine sent a message, one of strength, of honor, and of carrying forward a legacy. Every detail of her outfit spoke. The pearl drop earrings were a gift from Queen Elizabeth. Her small clutch bag was embroidered with lily of the valley, the Queen's favorite flower, a symbol of humility and quiet beauty. Even her sash held the Grand Officier of the National Order of Merit, a French honor given as part of the Macron's visit. It showed that she wasn't just Britain's princess. She was now a woman respected on the world stage. What made the night even more shocking, more emotional, was that no one had expected this. Just a year ago, news had quietly broken that Catherine was facing health issues. The palace said little. There were no photos, only silence. The public grew worried. Some feared the worst. But now, in one sudden, unforgettable night, she returned not as someone broken, but as someone stronger than ever before. A storm of emotions filled the hall. Some people smiled with joy. Some had tears in their eyes. For many, this was more than a royal banquet. It was a moment of hope, of healing, of the power of love, support, and quiet courage. Later that night, Catherine took her seat beside William. Cameras continued to flash, but she didn't look nervous. She didn't seem tired. Instead, she looked exactly like what many now saw, her as the future queen. Her hands rested softly in her lap. She nodded politely during the speeches. She laughed at small jokes. She leaned close to William as the toast was made. There was something peaceful in her, like someone who had been through darkness and come out the other side. She had changed, and everyone in the room could feel it. Catherine had always been loved for her kindness, her beauty, and her calm nature. But tonight, people saw something deeper. They saw resilience. They saw someone who had faced silence, pain, and pressure, and chosen to return not with noise, but with grace. The nation welcomed her. The palace welcomed her. And deep down, millions watching from home whispered the same words. "Welcome back, Catherine." She didn't need to say anything. Her presence alone spoke louder than words. Her return wasn't just stunning, it was unforgettable. After the lights faded from Windsor Castle that night, many people across the world still had one question in their hearts. Where had Catherine been? What really happened in those long, silent months when the Princess of Wales disappeared from the royal stage? The truth was heavier than anyone expected. It began quietly. One small change, a missed event here, a short announcement there. Then came the shocking moment, a public statement from Kensington Palace in early 2024. Catherine would be stepping back from public duties for medical reasons. It was brief. No details, no interviews, no pictures. The message was clear, but the silence that followed felt louder than ever before. At first, people thought it might be a simple illness, maybe stress, maybe a private family matter. But as weeks turned into months, worry grew. Catherine, who had always been strong, always smiling beside William, was now completely hidden from view. Her last official appearance had been at a royal engagement in late 2023. After that, she vanished. No photos, no smiles, no Christmas walk to church, not even a birthday message from the royal social pages. The public waited. The media guessed. But the palace stayed silent. In private, Catherine was facing something far more serious than anyone knew. According to close sources later revealed, doctors had discovered a major health issue. It required full focus, deep rest, and months of treatment. But more than her health, Catherine was also thinking about her family, about shielding Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and little Prince Louis from the noise. She didn't want her children to be scared. She didn't want the world watching their every step. So she disappeared, not out of weakness, but out of protection. For herself. For her family. Still, the silence was hard. Every royal event without her felt colder. Every balcony photo looked incomplete. Prince William stood strong in public, but behind the cameras his heart was heavy. He continued his royal duties, met world leaders, visited hospitals, and supported important causes, but his most important role now was at home. He became husband first, prince second, and people noticed. Photos of William without Catherine began to feel sad. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked thinner, tired, but never angry. He carried her absence with quiet strength, just as she had always carried the weight of royal life beside him. The press became restless. Rumors turned wild. Some reports grew dark and cruel. Was Catherine hiding something? Was the marriage in trouble? Was the truth worse than imagined? But through it all, there was no angry reply from the palace. No speeches, no interviews. Only silence. A silence that protected something precious. Then came another shock. On Mother's Day 2025, the palace released a photo of Catherine sitting with her children. It was meant to comfort the public. But instead, it exploded into chaos. People said the photo looked edited, that Catherine's hands looked strange, that Charlotte's smile seemed fake. News outlets around the world called it a Photoshop fail. The palace quickly said the image had been adjusted by the princess herself. The public was confused. Some were angry, some were worried. and some were simply heartbroken. What was going on? Why was the truth still hidden? People who once admired Catherine now questioned her. Headlines became cruel. Online whispers turned into loud judgment. Some forgot that behind the crown was a human being, a wife, a mother, a woman possibly in pain. But inside the walls of Adelaide Cottage, where Catherine and William lived quietly with their children, the truth was much softer and much stronger. Catherine wasn't hiding out of fear. She was healing. She was spending quiet days reading with her children, going on short walks when she felt strong, and letting her body rest after difficult treatments. Sometimes she would sit by the window and look out at the trees, her youngest child beside her. Other times she and William would sit in silence, holding hands, not needing to speak. In the darkest moments, they leaned on each other. Their love, once tested by the pressures of royal life, now stood stronger than ever. Those who knew her said Catherine never once complained. She accepted her journey with grace. She followed her doctor's advice, cared deeply for her children, and kept her spirit calm. William once told a close friend, "She's the strongest person I've ever known, and I've never loved her more." Still, the crisis continued behind palace walls. There were meetings, debates, discussions about how, or if, Catherine would return. Should they prepare the public? Should they keep protecting her? Would she ever feel strong enough to step back into the spotlight? And then one morning, just months before the French State Banquet, Catherine made a quiet decision. She walked into William's office, looked him in the eyes, and said something simple. "I'm ready. Not just to wear the gowns or smile, for the cameras." She was ready to stand again, not as the woman she was before, but as the woman she had become, someone deeper, wiser, and even more royal in her strength. Behind closed doors, preparations began. The red gown was designed. The tiara was chosen. Every symbol, every thread, every jewel was carefully placed, not just for fashion, but for meaning, for message. Because this wasn't just about a return, it was about transformation. Catherine had walked through fire, and now she was ready to rise, not as a princess returning to duty, but as a queen in the making. The world didn't know it yet, but Windsor Castle was about to become the stage for one of the most powerful comebacks in modern royal history. Catherine had returned to the palace, but behind her graceful smile and shining tiara, there was still something the world did not see, the weight she carried. Not just the weight of royal jewels, not just the pressure of public life, but the deep, quiet pain that no crown could hide. After months of silence and private healing, Catherine stepped back into the spotlight. The world cheered. The cameras flashed. But no one truly understood how difficult this return had been, because something had changed. Catherine was no longer the same woman who had once stood beside Prince William on sunny royal walks, shaking hands and smiling for the crowds. She had faced illness. She had faced fear. And worse, she had faced doubt, not just from strangers, but from voices inside her own heart. She had asked herself hard questions. Would the public still accept her? Would she be strong enough to wear the crown again? Would she be able to protect her children from the cruel noise outside the palace gates? She had seen the headlines. She had heard the rumors. Some people thought she was hiding. Some thought she was weak. Some thought she had abandoned her duties, but none of them knew the truth. Every day during her recovery, Catherine had kept a quiet journal. On some pages, she wrote prayers. On others, she wrote words of gratitude for her family, especially William. But one page stood out, a single sentence written during a particularly hard week. "The crown does not protect me. I must protect the crown." That was Catherine's secret, her deepest duty. Not just to appear perfect, but to hold the monarchy with grace, even when she herself felt broken. Inside the palace, not everyone agreed with her decision to return so soon. Some advisors warned her. The press might still attack. The pressure might be too much, and even one wrong photo could start another media storm. But Catherine listened quietly. and made her choice anyway. She was not returning to please. She was returning to lead. Still, the palace had to be careful. Her appearance at the French State Banquet had to be perfect, not for fashion but for history. Because this was not just a royal dinner. This was a powerful signal, between Britain and France, between the present and the future. And at the heart of it all stood Catherine. But even on the night of the banquet, the stress was sharp. As her hair was being styled and the final touches were made to her red gown, Catherine sat in silence. A staff member later said her hands were slightly shaking, though her face stayed calm. William entered the room, dressed in formal uniform. He looked at his wife and saw the worry in her eyes. Without saying a word, he took her hand. Their eyes met. And in that simple touch, everything settled. She was ready, but the pressure outside was still building. The public had waited too long. The press wanted answers. And some critics, those who never truly believed in her, were waiting for her to fail. One wrong word, one tear, one crack in her smile. That's all it would take for the headlines to turn cruel again. And even deeper still, behind all the cameras, the guests, the flags, and the flowers, there was another crisis. One not written in any newspaper. The monarchy itself was changing. King Charles was aging. His health had come into question. Prince Harry was far away, living a new life outside the royal circle. Scandals had shaken the family in recent years. The public trust had been tested, and many people quietly asked the hardest question of all. What will happen after Charles? The answer stood in a red gown at Windsor Castle. Catherine. She was not just a princess anymore. She was the face of the royal future. She knew it. William knew it. And so did the guests who watched her walk into the banquet hall that night. There was something different about her. Not just her beauty or her clothes, but her presence. It was stronger, wiser, heavier. Every piece of her outfit told a story. The tiara, once worn by Diana, was a symbol of pain and strength. It showed that she carried the memory of a woman who had once been crushed by fame, but also loved by the world. The royal family orders, one from Queen Elizabeth and one from King Charles, were symbols of deep trust. Not just awards, but rewards for loyalty, service, and courage. The lily-of-the-valley embroidery on her clutch was more than decoration. It was a quiet tribute to Queen Elizabeth, a reminder of humility and peace. Even the French honor she wore, the Grand Officier, of the National Order of Merit, showed the world that Catherine was more than a British figure. She was now a respected global stateswoman. But the most powerful thing she wore that night wasn't visible. It was grace under pressure. It was quiet courage. It was the invisible armor of a woman who had walked through darkness and chosen to walk back into the light even when it hurt. The weight of the crown was real. Catherine felt it with every step. It was not made of gold, but of duty, memory, and sacrifice. She knew the world could turn on her in an instant, but she also knew this truth. If she didn't stand strong, the future of the monarchy might not stand at all. So she smiled. She nodded. She stood beside William as the toast was raised, and in that moment under the golden chandeliers of Windsor Castle, Catherine was not just returning, she was rising, and the world, whether it was ready or not, was witnessing the quiet storm of a woman becoming history. Catherine stood at the head of the long table in Windsor Castle's grand ballroom. The golden chandeliers above her glowed like 1,000 suns. The air was thick with expectation. Every eye in the room watched her. Every heart in the kingdom beat a little faster. She knew her moment had come. She lifted her glass of champagne. The soft clink of crystal rang out. Silence fell like a velvet curtain. Catherine's red gown shimmered under the lights. Her cape-like train fell behind her, like a promise. The lover's knot tiara sparkled, a crown of diamonds and pearls that once rested on Diana's head. But tonight it belonged to Catherine. My husband and I, she began, her voice steady and clear, are honored to welcome President Macron and Madame Macron to our home and to our friendship. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. They spoke of unity and hope. They spoke of a future built on trust. As she spoke, she looked across the table. She saw faces of diplomats, politicians, and world leaders. She saw guests from France and the United Kingdom. She saw the hope in their eyes. They had heard whispers of her illness. They had seen the empty chairs at past events. They had wondered if she could ever return. But now here she was, more radiant, more powerful than ever. She paused. Then she spoke again, her tone gentle but firm. This night is not only a celebration of our two nations. It is a testament to the power of resilience, to the strength we gain when we stand together. A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the room. In that moment, Catherine did something shocking. She reached across the table and placed her hand on President Macron's. The sudden gesture surprised everyone, but it was not just for show. It was a true sign of friendship. The French president smiled. He returned her grip. Cameras flashed as the two leaders shared a simple, human moment. Then Catherine turned to William. He stood by her side in his formal naval uniform. His chest was covered in medals. He looked proud and relieved. He gave her a look filled with quiet love. Catherine felt her heart swell. She was home. Home in her marriage. Home in her duty. Home in her purpose. The banquet continued. Dishes flowed, from delicate canapés to rich roast beef, from French desserts to British cheeses. Each course was a tribute to both countries. Each course was a sign of harmony. Catherine tasted each bite. She smiled at the chefs. She thanked every server. She was present, fully present. During the speeches, Catherine remained seated but alert. She nodded at key moments. She laughed with genuine warmth when a light joke was made. She listened as William spoke of their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. He said their laughter and energy reminded him of the bright future ahead. Catherine reached out and held William's hand. The gesture was small but full of meaning. It said they were partners in life and duty. Later, after the formal program ended, Catherine took another bold step. She invited a young French student who had come to study in London to speak at a smaller table near the back. The student was nervous. He stood in front of royalty. His hands trembled. But Catherine placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and motioned for him to tell his story. He spoke of his love for British history and his dreams of becoming an ambassador. Tears filled his eyes. Catherine listened with respect. When he finished, she applauded him. The small crowd cheered. It was a quiet but powerful moment, one that showed how the royal family could lift up ordinary people. As the evening wound down, Catherine and William walked through the hall, greeting remaining guests. She paused by a group of young charity workers who had come to represent causes close to her heart. They worked on children's mental health, early childhood development, and youth well-being. Catherine knelt beside them. She spoke softly, asking about their projects. She praised their work. The young people looked at her with awe. Catherine's genuine interest made them feel seen and valued. Finally, the banquet drew to a close. William and Catherine stood at the top of the grand staircase once more. They looked out over the crowd. Then they turned and walked downstairs together. Catherine's train swept the marble floor. William's arm was gently around her waist. They descended, as a united pair, royal and human, strong yet vulnerable. Outside carriages waited. The cold night air met the warm glow of the castle. Catherine paused for a moment. She looked up at Windsor's towers. She felt the weight of history around her, the queens and kings who had stood before. She felt the ghosts of royal mistakes and triumphs. She felt the hopes of millions who watched her from screens and newspapers, and she felt a calm certainty. She had passed her greatest test. Not by wearing jewels nor by giving fine speeches, but by showing her true self, her strength, her kindness, her courage. She had taken her place again, not as someone healed, but as someone renewed. In the days that followed, the world echoed with praise. Newspapers called it The most inspiring state banquet in decades. Social media filled with words like resilience, grace, and heart. Even critics softened their tone. They wrote about Catherine's bravery. They admitted how wrong they had been to doubt her. At home, Catherine returned to Adelaide Cottage. She walked into the nursery where her children played. George ran to hug her. Charlotte smiled and showed her a drawing she made. Louis crawled into her lap. Catherine hugged them all. In that moment, she was not a princess. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who had weathered a storm and come back to love. That night, when she lay in bed beside William, he turned to her and whispered, "You were amazing." Catherine smiled. She reached up and touched the lover's knot tiara that William had placed on her dressing table, a souvenir of her triumph. She closed her eyes and said quietly, "We did it together." And in the silent comfort of their shared triumph, Catherine finally allowed herself to rest. Her journey had been long and hard, but she had risen, she had led, and she had shown the world what true royalty could be.